Hello internet friends, and welcome back to my series where we look for quality clothing within a brand. Today we are focusing on Everlane. Everlane. What a wild ride Everlane has had. One minute they're all for radical transparency and showing everyone how much an item is worth, and then the next I thought, you know what, never mind, capitalism be capitalizing. Here's some facts about how much we are maybe sort of not really harming the planet, but like we're just gonna be really vague about it all. In this video, we're gonna deep dive into Everlane and understanding the company. Then we are gonna take a look at their current offerings. To spice things up a little bit, you know who copies Everlane the most? Quince. Quince copies Everlane quite a bit. Their website is notorious for touting its comparability to Everlane at a lower cost. So today we're going to break down the quality and history of Everlane and at the same time use Quince as a benchmark to see if the increase in price for Everlane is worth it. If you missed my Quince deep dive, you can check that out somewhere up here somewhere. Everlane was founded in 2011 by Michael Pressman and Jesse Farmer. However, Jesse Farmer was out within like the first couple months of launching the website. The concept for Everlane came out of radical transparency and our favorite San Fran tech bro verbiage, being disruptive. Paraphrasing a bit from an episode of How I Built This with Guy Raz, Michael was aware that companies like James Purse were making t-shirts for $5 and selling them for $45. He thought, why not sell the shirts online and let everyone know how much it costs to make and sell it for a fraction of the cost? Radical transparency. For a while, this worked out really well for them when they were on a smaller scale, literally just selling t-shirts and then bow ties and weirdly backpacks. Eventually, with the growth, they started looking at manufacturers and how to be as transparent as possible with that. Took on creative director / designer, notably Rebecca Bay, the former creative director of Gap and Cause. And then the pandemic rolled around and Everlane's bubble was starting to burst. From discrimination allegations, union busting, shout out to our boy Bernie Sanders, and greenwashing claims popping up left and right. Everlane was not looking good. Instead of radical transparency, some radical shifting took place. Michael Pressman stepping away as CEO and became executive chairman. They tested out a few different CEOs and finally settled on Alfred Chang, former CEO of PacSun and Fear of God. So a bit of a streetwear background going on into a very minimalist Everlane brand. They also currently don't have a creative director as of like 3 weeks ago. They just posted the job opening. So if you're looking for a creative director position, now's your time to shine. And oh yeah, they also took on a private equity investment from L Catterton in 2020. L Catterton is LVMH's private equity firm. I am gonna save my thoughts on that for my final thoughts and hot takes at the end of the video, so stay tuned if you want to hear that. Real quick though, I want to shout out today's sponsor. Before we move on, I want to share something that has made my travel days dramatically easier. After moving to Florida, I find myself doing a lot more staycations, and I don't always need a crazy big suitcase for these shorter trips. That is why I am stoked to work with today's sponsor, Nomad Lane. The bento bag from Nomad Lane is designed to function like a small carry-on, but still meet personal item size requirements. And the organization is on another level. It opens flat like a suitcase, which means I can pack it intentionally, clothes on one side, tech and toiletries on the other, without everything collapsing into a single pile, which is like fantastic. It's made from premium weather-resistant nylon paired with LWG certified leather, so it looks refined but still holds up when travel gets messy. It's function and style without compromise, which you know is kind of my thing around here. There's a padded laptop sleeve that fits up to a 16-inch laptop, a zip-away water bottle pocket, a built-in key leash, and a dedicated tech pouch. All those thoughtful details that make a difference when you're on the go. You can check it out using the link down below, and if you have any travel essentials you swear by, drop them in the comments. I'm always looking for clever little upgrades like this one. Okay, let's dive into Everlane's current offerings. Let's just start out with the most intriguing and in-depth one of all, the merino wool half zip sweater in Luxe Merino. $168, I paid $126, listed it as 100% Luxe Merino wool, comparing to Quince's Australian merino wool half zip sweater at $80. Quince lists this as 19.5 micron thickness. Micron refers to the diameter of thickness of the hair. For reference, a human hair typically has a thickness of 50 to 100 microns, and wool is typically 10 to 50 microns. The lower the micron, the softer the hand feel of the fiber. The Quince sweater, hands down, is by and far softer than the Everlane. by a long shot, and both have been washed once. As we learned in my fabric blends video, merino wool can be coated in polymer, also known as plastic finishes, to help with softness. This is often coded with terms like using a special wash for softness or ultra soft merino. The vast majority of manufacturers superwash unless the wool is listed as organic. Retailers can't label clothing organic if it has polymers, resin, or chlorinated treatments on it. I reached out to both Everlane and Quince to see if they would give me any info on the process, and I actually got a pretty decent response from Everlane. It's a little vague, but hear me out. Our sweaters go through the typical sweater washing process during production, with the wash recipe tailored to our quality standards. This process does not contain any softeners, silicones, or enzymes. Plus, we don't coat the yarn with any polymers or resins during the wash process. Our goal of washing isn't necessarily to soften the sweater alone, but to remove oil, dust, and odor during processing, improve hand feeling or softness, and ensure the shape is just right. So pretty fascinating response. If Quince has responded to my video by the time I edit this, hopefully I'll be able to edit it in. If not, we're just gonna move on. It is fascinating to me though, because this sweater in particular has a very felted finish to it, plus it is dry clean only. So the fact that it is dry clean only and has a rougher hand feel, the chances of this being super washed or having a resin finish on it are pretty small. One thing that I did find really interesting when I was doing additional research on this is you cannot label your wool organic if it has any chemical processing or resin finishes on it. I actually did find some product that was around the $180 price point from the brand Dillings that does list their product as organic wool. So it does beg the question, why is Everlane not listing their product as organic if it does fall into the organic category? Because they do sell organic cotton. Pretty corporate jargon, but I am currently working on a mega wool and cashmere buyer's guide deep dive, so hopefully soon we can all understand how to understand the wonderful and confusing world of buying these things. If you're really interested in non-superwash organic wool though, Dilling is a really good option, and I'll leave that link down below. Okay, so sweaters. Everlane is dry clean only. I get the feeling it has less treatments because even after one hand wash, it already has a sort of felting feeling to it. It's soft, but not soft enough that I wouldn't want a t-shirt on under it. The Quince I can wear by itself, but honestly, I wear all my wool pieces with something on underneath. I think as far as softness goes, Quince wins, but as far as looks, it's ultimately more style preference. You have cropped or not cropped. Next, we have cotton items. The boxy cardigan, Everlane, $138. I paid $104 compared to Quince at $50. Both are 100% organic cotton. The Everlane is significantly thicker and softer. I have owned the Quince for almost a full year now, but as far as softness and fit, I think the Everlane has more character and style to it. I get the feeling Everlane will shrink down a bit more over time, but for double the price, it's really up to you as a consumer if you feel like the extra $50 is a valuable increase for coziness. Okay, the must-have Oxford shirt, $98. I paid $74. Quince canceled my order for their version, but I have already said I really dislike Quince's cotton poplin, and something tells me the Oxford would be the same. They do list theirs as using an enzyme wash though, so I was a little bummed when it was canceled. I wanted to see the difference in hand feel. Everlane's is a more traditional Oxford shirt with a thicker, rougher hand feel. A few things to point out where they cut corners. The stitching is shorter on higher quality Oxfords. For comparison, this thrifted Ralph Lauren Oxford retail would be around $125. Even secondhand, the buttonholes are in better condition because they are higher stitch density. Some people prefer gussets and the buttons on the neckline. I am one of those people, random fun fact, but the buttons started because polo players didn't want the collars flapping around, and now as a non-athletic person who sits at my desk all day, I desperately need those buttons to stay down. Next, the boxy sweater in everyday cotton, $108, I paid $81, Quince is $40. Both are organic cotton. The Everlane is a higher gauge, tighter knit. It's probably going to hold its structure longer and built more with longevity in mind, but the neckline is pretty stretched out after a month of wear compared to the Quince that I've had for almost a full year. Okay, next, my personal favorite, the high-rise pleated jean, $158, I paid $119. These are 60% organic cotton, 40% tensile lyocell. I refuse, just on principle alone, to order denim from Quince. They just haven't made anything that seems like it would be a long-term investment or worthwhile. I really like the hand feel of these and the structure. I think the cut is the first hint of intentionality I've seen with Everlane. Something like this takes design and not just a copy and paste. And I think that's where Everlane really shines. I have some thrifted denim from Everlane that is also a favorite of mine. I also am super interested in the Tencel Lyocell space for fabric. Lensing just announced Tencel Lyocell HV100, which is supposed to have a denim hand feel to it. And I just think it's an interesting space for cutting down the strain on cotton production with denim. It's one of those only time will tell if it is gonna work, but it's still fascinating to me nonetheless. Okay, last cotton item is the Slim Crew in Essential Cotton at $38. Quince is $15, both organic cotton. There's just no comparison. The Everlane is so worth the money on this one. Fit, neckline, premium cotton, all around a better t-shirt. I do have to say though, the Pima cotton tee from Uniqlo is almost identical and slightly cheaper, but not organic cotton. Okay, final round, linen, the must-have linen shirt, $98. I paid $59, Quince $39, both European linen. Everlane again has a rougher hand feel, so less chemical treatments most likely. Also has tighter stitching and the buttonholes are marginally better. It's going to soften with wear though. I think the Everlane has more longevity to it, even compared to the J. Crew Irish linen. I think it's overall better construction. And the linen barrel pants compared to Quince, again, structure and attention to fit is unmatched with Everlane. They have character where Quince is just cookie cutter. Okay, so to wrap all of this up, wool is rougher and most likely less processed. Cotton, I think overall wins for hand feel. However, the price differences are really up to you, but that t-shirt, oof. No, the t-shirts from Quince are just like diabolical. And I think the linen is personally worth the price point if you can catch it on sale. Okay, my final thoughts and hot takes, because you know I always have some. Okay, first off, we are literally just witnessing the slow death of a fashion brand. Quince is doing what Everlane did in its infancy stage with revealing prices and radical transparency. And now Everlane is a more mature brand dealing with lots of struggles. And it's at the point where it either drifts off or makes a major comeback. But I think it's so hard for them to bounce back from 2020. It just was not a good look. The interview that I listened to with Guy Raz on how I built this, he really pointed out the idea that like radical transparency and letting everybody see the sustainability side of things oftentimes can be what ruins the company because you're automatically held to a lot higher standards. But I think that's what still makes Everlane kind of like the underdog and you're almost rooting for them because on the market right now, there are so few brands that are actually doing that. But at the same time, it's so hard for consumers to understand if something is greenwashing or if they really are doing something that's that much better. I mean, when you look at like Everlane versus Quince, you can't help but notice that like everything's 100% cotton, everything is, you know, sustainably sourced. You got certifications here, certifications there. And it's just like, okay, well, why is there a 50% price difference? Like that's what we're always trying to understand. So Everlane is still simultaneously trying to capture the sustainability market at the same time as profit. And that's a hard thing to do right now. But this is where the numbers really shine through and make things so interesting. Quince raised $200 million in July of this year, making them worth $4.5 billion. They just keep raising enormous amounts of venture capital. And if you have ever watched a business operate like that, like Uber, Lyft, WeWork, Quibi, Theranos. And the fascinating thing was Everlane in its early years actually didn't take on a lot of venture capital. They eventually did, but it was by no means the amount that Quince is. And I honestly think the L. Catterton private equity investment was what saved them in the long run. But as we all know with private equity, you are now beholden to the ruthless board members. And this normally leads to cutting corners at the expense of the customers. I think what we're learning with Everlane is the cost of radical transparency and disruption mixed with sustainability just equals struggles. And it's just hard for those things to coexist if you want growth. But I do think as far as impact goes, Everlane most likely is better and less environmental impact over Quince. I think Quince operates in a bubble right now, and that bubble always has a shelf life. It's just waiting to burst. Every influencer and podcaster, basically anyone willing to advertise for them, gets major kickbacks, and they send out free products like left and right just to get anybody to talk about it. But when you look at the venture capital that they've raised, it definitely makes you understand how they're able to do that. But nothing like that ever lasts. And in the long run, in my opinion, it always pays the price. And as most of you guys know, I actually genuinely like Quince, but I think they might be in the infancy stage right now, primed for an Everlane story. But they have a lot farther to fall because of their valuation. And also, you guys, just to be clear, like I don't half the time, I don't know this stuff. I didn't go to finance school. I don't know a heck of a lot about private equity and venture capital, except for what I have available to me on the internet. I haven't lived any of those experiences, but I have lived long enough to watch a lot of these turn out not so great. So, does that make it the decision for you? No. But I hope it at least gives you some personal knowledge to help aid in your decision. A lot of times I think I leave a lot of you hanging on waiting for me to say yes or no, or good or bad, or where should I shop? And honestly, the answer just isn't that easy. I wish it was. And unfortunately, as long as we don't have regulations or laws in place that protect the environment and basic human rights, it will continue to be confusing and murky. It's really just what you can afford and what you're willing to make sacrifices on, because the jump to Everlane is about 40 to 50% price-wise, and I don't think you get a 50% quality increase, but you do get a bit of a sustainability increase, just in sheer production level alone. But the jump to, say, basic Ralph Lauren is about 10 to 20% from Everlane, and I think the quality increase is actually worth it. And in my eyes, is a 50% jump in quality. And I know that's even more confusing, but it's just some food for thought. Also worth noting, Everlane has a good score on Good On You, while Quince has a not good enough score. That is it for today's video. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you're new around here, I might have a couple extra videos for you right here, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.